This demonstration is for the two of you off our painting for Art Explorations. You can see I have my paint palette with my color orange that I'm going to use to finish this second painting for my two paintings. This one's all my monochromatic blues, where I used the blue and added mixed white, and I mixed black into those blues to get the tints, tones, and shades. So I wanted to demonstrate on this one that's not finished yet how I do that. I've got my cup of water, I've got my paint palette with my color, and I've got black and white in my palette of the tempera paint that we've talked about in class. I have a couple of brushes, and I also have some paper towels to keep the amount of water that's in my brush controlled, and also to help clean my brush out. So I'm going to just kind of get my brush wet here, dab it on the paper towel. You don't want to use a lot of water with tempera paint. We want the tempera paint to be opaque, which means we can't see the paper below. It's not supposed to be watered down. Sometimes I add a little bit of water just to kind of smooth out the brush or smooth out the paint. I can mix colors right on my painting. I'm going to have a light orange here and a darker orange here, so I'm going to put some orange paint right in here. I try to just use the tip of the brush so that I can control the amount of paint and make sure the edges of the shape that I'm going to paint. I'm going to switch brushes here because a smaller brush might help to get into these areas over here. So you notice that I'm not smashing the brush down into the paper. Great thing about tempera paint is that when it's dried, you can paint over it. So an edge that's not real clean, my brush must have had a little bit of black paint in it still because it is showing up on my orange here. But anyway, you can paint over an area when it's dry. I like to kind of work around on the edges first to get those nice and clean. So in this painting, the neater you are at your painting, the more time that you take to make it look nice and neat and have nice clean edges on the outside of your shapes, the neater your overall painting will be. So I'm going to take and mix just a little bit of black right into this orange here. I can do that right on my paint palette here and mix it right here, and you can see what happens to the black or to the orange when I add that black into that, and I can mix right on my paper as well and blend those colors together. So notice that I'm not going back into my water. Not unless I want to switch colors in my paint or clean out my brush. And then when I clean out my brush, kind of swirl the brush around, wipe it on the inside edge of the cup, and then go to the paper towel. Please kind of use only 2 or 3 paper towels when you're painting. I'll mix a little orange over here. Also, it doesn't make more paint to add more water. It just waters down the paint, and again, that's not the effect that we want when we're using tempera paint. So if I take and have a clean brush now, and I can dip it into my white paint over here and add to this, you can see that now that orange is getting a little bit lighter. So maybe I'll paint this. And if a color, now this orange is almost like the orange right next to it. So what I might do to change that would be just to add a little bit more white. And again, I could do that right on the paper. So I clean out my brush, add a little bit more white to it and blend that, and then I get an orange that's a bit different from that darker orange, but still not as light as this one. You want to try to have at least 2 tints and shades of your color on your painting. And a tint is when you add white, a shade is when you add black, and a tone is when you might add black and white to your color. Of course, black and white, when we blend those 2 colors or mix those 2 colors together, we get an orange. So I would finish off this shape here, kind of paint over some of that that's already dried. Now, it doesn't work to try to clean up an edge that the paint is not dry yet. Because if you do that, it's just going to blend in with that color. You could kind of work with it to make it look kind of clean, but that's a little bit about using the Tempera paint. It is hard to wash out of clothes, but it is washable with soap and water, and you'll find all of the tools that you need over at the sink area. And we'll talk about cleanup when we do some of the cleanup procedures in here. So that's a little bit about painting with the Tempera paint on your 2-view op art painting.